Imagine if you lost 20, 30, 40, or even 50 pounds or more right away. Would you be more attractive to the opposite sex? Feel better? Sleep better? If you've tried to lose weight in the past and repeatedly failed, then you need to know about a true game-changer medication. Semaglutide is FDA approved. It can produce quick and easy results. Call the number on your screen now for free info. This is the last diet you'll ever go on. Finally lose the weight and keep it off. There's no pain, no surgery, no exercise plan, no starvation, no fasting, no silly meal prep. In fact, you can continue to eat the foods you love. Pause this screen and take down this number or store it in your cell phone. But call today for free information. The Advanced Medical Weight Loss Program is physician-based and works with your body naturally to create the feeling of being full. This is not just about losing weight. This is about what your life can become as a thinner you. Call the number on your screen now for free info. Finally lose the weight and keep it off. Look great this summer, but hurry. There's a huge demand for this product and shortages may occur at any time. Call the number on your screen now for free information.
Welcome to the Turnpike Sports Spotlight. Dave Weishautel with you. Working in the gambling industry, I've been to a lot of gaming conferences, but there's one coming up that I think is really special. Not only does it have the top experts in the gambling field, but it's being held at one of the most beautiful areas in this country. It's called the Racing and Gaming Conference at Saratoga. It's being held on August 12th through the 14th. And we're going to find out all about it because on the line we have the conference's owner and director, Patrick Brown. Pat, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
I got to tell you, the Racing and Gaming Conference at Saratoga is certainly an important conference, not only for the horse racing industry, but for the gambling industry as a whole. I mean, tell us about the history of the conference. When was the conference first held, and what was the inspiration for its creation?
Well, the conference began as a one-day horse racing symposium put on for New York lawyers by the Albany Law School Government Law Center. And it stayed in that horse racing mode for almost 2 decades. And it was held every year in Saratoga during the race meet. And then, in the maybe 10 years ago, when casino gambling and sports betting and other forms of gambling became more prevalent and more in the news, the law school decided to go to 2 days, one day for horse racing, one day for other forms of gambling. And then the law school decided in 2020 that they didn't want to put the conference on any longer. And so I had been involved as a member of the advisory board of the Government Law Center for many years, helping to put the conference on. So I stepped forward and said, if the law school doesn't want to do it, I'll do it. And 2020, if you remember that year, my first official act was to cancel the conference because there was no horse racing at Saratoga, at least not for its fans. And so the conference didn't make a lot of sense in 2020. But with the really good people at Spectrum Gaming, I've been putting the conference on now since 2021. So we have 3 conferences under my belt here, and this will be the 4th.
Well, you mentioned Spectrum Gaming, and you certainly have great partners when it comes to this conference. I know you have a list of very impressive sponsors. As you said, Spectrum Gaming is the presenting sponsor. Tell us about some of the sponsors that are involved in the Racing and Gaming Conference at Saratoga, because these are some of the leading companies when you're talking about horse racing and gaming in this country.
Oh, yes. We run the gamut. We have racetrack sponsors. We have casino sponsors. We have sports betting sponsors. I have several government relations and law firms that are also sponsors. My former firm, I'm now retired, but my former firm, Brown and Weinraub, has been a sponsor since the beginning, and Greenberg Traurig and Harris Beach, all of those are law firms here in New York that have really been stalwart supporters of this. But then, Genting, Resorts World has been a sponsor, MGM. We go, you go right down the line. Scientific Games, the Las Vegas Sands. The folks behind the bid for the Coney Island Casino were big prime sponsors last year, and I expect they will be again this year. Every year, the OTBs in New York step up, and they've been sponsors for a long time. When the law school ran the conference, and when I took it over.
Now, you also have a very impressive list of speakers at the Racing and Gaming Conference at Saratoga. You guys always do. It's such an amazing conference, and you always see the people you hear about all year in the news and the gaming news and the horse racing news. Can you tell me some of the speakers and presenters that people can hear from at the event, because it's really impressive?
Sure. I mean, this year is quite a lineup. We are really privileged to have several commissioners from around the country, racing and gaming commissioners. On one panel, we have the executive director of the four largest gaming states, well, three of the largest, and Texas. We have California, Florida, New York, and Texas all represented on a panel to kick off the conference, actually. And then on a different panel, we have two other executive directors. We have lottery directors. So we have a lot of folks on the regulatory side. We always have the committee chairs in New York, Assemblyman Pretlow and Senator Adabo, and they always come and make great contributions to the conference, talking about what's happening in New York. And then on the business side, we've really expanded this year, and we've got representatives from all the tote companies and from the major sports betting companies. FanDuel and DraftKings are represented on one of the panels. This is going to be really chock full of experts this year, for sure. And then I do want to mention that I've made an effort to broaden not only the subject matter scope of the conference, but also the geographic scope. I firmly believe that gaming, horse racing are international enterprises at this point. And so we've taken the conference from a New York-centric to a regional, to a national, and now we've brought in some folks representing international points of view, folks from Europe, folks from Asia. On our panel, for example, on stewards and the communication between what essentially is the horse racing referee and the horse racing audience, the bettors and the fans, we've got Kim Kelly is going to be a speaker on that panel, and he is the former chief steward for the Hong Kong Jockey Club, and just a real expert in that field. And he's going to bring some expertise and talk about what they do in other countries and other jurisdictions and how stewards communicate with the racing public. I think that's going to be a fascinating panel. We saw what happened in the Kentucky Derby this year.
Yeah.
And, you know, in North America, stewards do not explain their decisions, unlike the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball. The communication between racing stewards in this country and the public is really almost non-existent. Yeah. And so that's going to be an interesting topic. But back to the speakers, we have a person representing the largest tote company in Europe. She's going to come and speak on the how the tote system in Europe differs from what's happening in this country, and that's also going to be a very international oriented panel, because we're going to talk about sort of the worldwide pools and how you can create them, how you can mix different regulatory and tax jurisdictions and still put the pools together. That's going to be an interesting panel to get the European point of view there.
I love the way you're starting off this conference, because when you're talking about horse racing, you're beginning with an issue that a lot of people in the horse racing industry are talking about, and that is the Horse Racing Integrity and Safety Authority, or HISA as a lot of people call it. For the industry, it's an incredibly important issue. Tell us about the Horse Racing Integrity and Safety Authority, and what are you going to cover in that panel?
Well, it's such a broad topic that I want to be sure that whatever bite of it we take for an hour-long panel is, isn't too much, right? You can't, you can't do justice to the entire topic in an hour. So what we're going to focus on this year, in the years past, we've had HISA panels where we focused on the constitutionality of the statute and those types of issues, which are fascinating issues, particularly to the lawyers who attend, but even the non-lawyers. It's an interesting subject matter. But this year we're not going to go that route. We're going to talk about sort of the practical impact of the federalization of thoroughbred horse racing regulation, sort of the day-to-day changes that HISA has brought. In the state of New York, for example, it has always been the responsibility of the New York State Gaming Commission to regulate the races that occur in New York. And that takes on all different kinds of aspects. The horses, the jockeys, the backstretch, the track, all of that falls under the Gaming Commission purview. Well, now it doesn't. Now we have a new regulator, a new regime coming in from the feds. And so the question of this panel is, kind of not to be too glib about it, but what are the state regulators doing with all that time they now have now that they're not regulating horse racing?
Yeah.
kind of how did they adapt to this? Mm-hmm. I frankly have not seen any state where the tithe on the industry for the state regulator has gone down. I haven't seen any states that are laying people off. So it's kind of an interesting practical look at what changes HISA has wrought here.
Now, you mentioned New York, and another panel you're having at the Racing and Gaming Conference at Saratoga is the subject that on the East Coast has been in the news constantly for over the last couple of years, and that is New York's downstate casinos. The name of that panel is Downstate Casinos. Are we back to if instead of when? I got to tell you, it seems like last year when I was talking to you, I was pretty certain that within a couple of years we're going to have casinos in the New York City area. I mean, as we're talking right now, what is the status of the casino industry coming to the New York City area? I mean, I'm hearing things about Citi Field having a casino, Times Square having a casino near the United Nations, which I think would be an absolute nightmare for traffic. What is the status of all those plans right now? What are you hearing about New York City area casinos?
Well, first let's talk about timing. The executive director of the Gaming Commission announced maybe 2 months ago, something like that, that he didn't expect the bids to be in until fourth quarter of 2025. So, he really put the brakes on any expectation that this process was going to be completed in the next year or 18 months. Now, the Gaming Commission has to follow the legislation that was passed by the New York State Legislature, and part of that legislation requires that all bidders are in compliance with local zoning laws before they submit their bid to the state. Well, that has created quite a bottleneck in the process because, not surprisingly, the New York City zoning laws did not contemplate having casinos anywhere.
Yeah.
And so they had to make changes to the New York City zoning law, and now those changes have to be applied to each of the prospective bidders. And that's a process, and it takes time. Now, what we're going to focus on in this panel, I think, is a really interesting aspect of the downstate casino selection process. Something that makes New York's process unique, certainly in this country, maybe worldwide, and that is the amount of local input and some would say control that the legislation gives to New York City elected officials and their representatives. The mechanism in the law is a community advisory panel. I view it as the first major screen that an applicant has to get through in order to even compete at the state level. So these panels are made up of representatives, one from the mayor, one from the governor, one from the borough president where the casino is to be located, one from the city council member who represents the area, one from the member of the assembly, and one from the member of the New York State Senate. So 6 people are going to be that first screen. And, frankly, no matter how much of a casino mogul you are or real estate mogul you are. If you don't get 4 of those 6 votes, your project isn't going any further. That is a, really different approach on empowering local communities, and it has created, a very significant, timing issue.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to take a long time for these panels to be formed, to do their work, and then to make their decisions. And they haven't even started yet. So we're months off from that.
In your opinion, how important will it be to the gaming and casino industry to have New York City area casinos? I can tell you, as someone sitting in New Jersey, the people in Atlantic City would love for you to take your time, and they're really holding their breath to see what happens here. But how much of an impact will New York City area casinos have nationwide on the gaming and casino industry?
Well, the experts say that New York City and the surrounding area is the largest untapped casino gaming market, certainly in this country, maybe in the world. So it's going to have a very significant impact on casinos. Atlantic City, yeah, but the Connecticut casinos, certainly. Sure. The casinos in Pennsylvania, this is going to impact all of that region. I mean, people do these diagrams when they're analyzing the market for a casino, and if you put a pin in Times Square and go out an hour and a half, you've got easily 10 million people, maybe more. So that doesn't mean just building a casino is going to change people's habits. It's going to have to be good. It's going to have to be stellar, which I expect out of all of these really high-flying casino companies and real estate companies that are seeking to bid here. We've got some incredible projects vying for these licenses. You hear numbers thrown around. I mean, the Coney Island people just came this week with a $3 billion build, and the Sands are talking about $8 billion in Nassau, and I mean these are crazy numbers. So the economic stimulus in New York City will be great. The construction jobs and then the permanent jobs thereafter, fantastic for the city. And it's going to have an impact. Of course it will.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'm a huge horse racing fan, and to be perfectly honest with you, when I think of Saratoga, I think of horse racing, and you're certainly having a really important panel on the horse racing industry entitled Horse Racing, The Reports of My Death Are Greatly Exaggerated, which is a great title for a panel. What is the health of horse racing industry right now? I mean, we just had the Kentucky Derby a few weeks ago, and it broke records in terms of betting handle. How strong is the horse racing industry right now?
Well, first I want to make a comment about the title of the panel. Mark Twain frequented Saratoga quite a bit, and in fact, when he was ghostwriting President Grant's autobiography, he lived just outside Saratoga and spent a good deal of time in the Adelphi Hotel on Broadway in Saratoga, where, by the way, we're holding a cocktail party on the first night of the conference. It's a fantastic venue. So that quote from Mark Twain was selected specifically because of his connections to the area. The state of horse racing is mixed, I think is the best way to say it. There are tracks closing, there is contraction in the industry, but this panel that you mentioned, this panel is going to focus on the building, the positive side of horse racing. And 4 states will be represented on this panel where hundreds of millions of dollars are being invested by private industry and by governments to rebuild existing racing facilities and build new racing facilities. I mean, New York is in the news a lot, and it's about $500 million that they're going to put in Belmont to rebuild the track there. This is something that's been talked about forever. Mm-hmm. When I was Mario Cuomo's racing advisor in the late 80s, NYRA came to me with a proposal to rebuild Belmont. So I sort of gave myself away there by age. But anyway, it's finally off the drawing board, and it's a real thing. And I can't wait, frankly, to hear David O'Rourke talk about what the new Belmont going to look like. And then you have the legislation in Maryland where Pimlico is going to be taken over and rebuilt. And then Nebraska is really a fascinating story. They're building 6 racing facilities in Nebraska. So we're going to hear about that. And of course, the track in Kentucky, which is going to be subsidized with the historical horse racing revenues, mm-hmm. That's a new experiment and something that's going to be interesting to hear about. So yeah, I look forward to that panel. It's good news. It's horse owners and horse players. Mm-hmm. We tend toward the negative. Life is full of disappointments and then very short bursts of joy if you are a horse player or a horse owner. So this is the short burst of joy in the industry, I'm hoping.
Well, I got to ask you, you're having a panel on a topic that has become very interesting to me, and that is about racinos and how they actually fit into the gambling landscape of this country. I know some sports betting operators are making deals with a lot of them, and every state treats them differently, whether they're allowed a certain amount of slots and a certain amount of table games on their property. I know every state is different in how they treat these entities. How do you see racinos fitting into the gambling industry of this country?
Well, let's just say, first off, racinos have been wildly successful. Mm-hmm. They have generated incredible revenue for states. And, states love non-tax revenue that comes in large buckets. And that's what gaming revenue is. And so racinos have been very successful for states and for the racing industry. The payments made to the racing industry in New York and others have made the kind of purse structure that we are now sort of familiar with possible. So racinos have been successful. So the instinct is, well, we got to find a place for them. And there's the real issue. I don't think racinos have shown themselves to be able to compete with a full-blown casino next door. Mm-hmm. There may be some examples where that has happened, but by and large, racinos don't fare well in a direct competition with casinos. So, for example, MGM in Yonkers and Resorts World in Queens at Aqueduct, those places generate hundreds of millions of dollars for the state in gaming revenue. If those two places get casino licenses, which, the safe money is certainly on those two places as getting two of the three, what happens to the racino revenue? Does somebody else take over those machines? Do the upstate racinos expand? It's a really tough questions, and so I'm interested to hear both from like the Wall Street guys, like what would they invest in type of thing, and the regulator side, like where can racinos go to continue to generate the kind of revenue that they have for the state.
Now, I also see you're having a panel on something that has become very important in the gambling industry, and that is the lottery. You're having a panel called The Modernization of the Lottery, A Brave New World. Now, the lottery has been around for years, but I've never seen the popularity grow the way it has in the last couple of years. I got to tell you, in a non-scientific way I'm thinking of this show has been on since 2007, and the last couple of years, we have never had as many advertisers as state lotteries on this show. It's been absolutely incredible. How do you see the lottery in the gaming landscape, and why has it become so important in the gambling industry?
Well, lottery, people say, the lottery is venerable. To some people, that's just a nice way of saying old.
Yeah.
But to other people, it means wise and experienced. And, lotteries have been around for a very long time. And state-run lotteries have been around since, certainly, I think New Hampshire was the first one in the 60s. So they have been generating gaming revenue for states for decades, okay? And the states have grown used to generating that revenue. So lotteries are not going anywhere. States are going to protect that revenue base. And so the question is, how do they best do that? And the obvious answer is to go toward the iLottery space. Mm-hmm. And it's been difficult, I think. I think lotteries are traditionally conservative. I mean, they're essentially state agencies. They're not made to have the kind of risk-taking that entrepreneurs in the private gaming industry can take. So it's taken a while, but I think we're going to see a proliferation of iLottery, maybe before iGaming comes. I mean, iGaming is a tough sell in a lot of states. And, it's kind of taken people by surprise. Sports betting was a relatively easy sell in a lot of states, and iGaming hasn't been. Mm-hmm. But I think iLottery will be kind of the next big thing. And, I mean, you have the built-in customer base that is loyal and been there forever. I mean, that's why I think private industry is really interested in the iLottery idea.
Now, you mentioned iGaming, and that's always a big issue for the casino industry. And again, you have a panel that's entitled Casinos, iGaming, and Sports Betting. What do you see as the future of iGaming and online casinos? You think this will be the year that more and more states will allow online casinos within their borders? I know in your state you're in, Senator Addabbo is really a champion for online casinos. So do you think 2025 will be the year New York will allow online casinos?
No, I don't think so. I think eventually, iGaming, online casinos will come. Mm-hmm. I think it's a, as I said before, a harder sell. And here's the thing we're going to focus on in that panel.
Okay.
And I think this is the crux of the matter. There are fears that iGaming cannibalizes bricks and mortar gross gaming revenue, and not enough of that cannibalization is made up on the iGaming side. And, I think the jury is still out on that subject. We're going to have Senator Addabbo, of course, and others who will come and argue passionately that the fear of cannibalization is misplaced. But equally as passionate are people who either have invested in bricks and mortar casinos or who work in bricks and mortar casinos. I'm speaking now of the hotel workers in New York, but in other states as well. These folks are very passionate that they don't want to see iGaming until it can be shown that it isn't going to have a negative impact on their bottom lines. So we're going to have a very spirited conversation in this panel about that cannibalization issue.
As a lawyer, I always look at the trials and the case law involving the gambling industry, and a lot of those cases have to do with gambling and tribal casinos, especially when we're looking at sports betting. And at the conference, you have a panel called Indian Country and Gaming. What do you see are the issues facing tribal casinos and gambling and sports betting, and what do you think the next year will look like when we're talking about tribal casinos and online gambling or online sports betting?
Well, I think the regulations for online sports betting and online gaming for Indian tribes were finally promulgated back a couple months ago. And it's a real game changer because those regulations allow for tribes to compete on an equal footing with commercial sports betting operations, so that in a state that allows a commercial sports betting company to accept bets from anywhere in the state, that will be that right will be afforded to the tribes as well. It will become a subject of negotiation in their compacting. So this is huge for the tribes. It will, for the first time, expand the base of the customer beyond sovereign territory. And that is, as I say, that's a game changer. And we have the former chair of the NIGC, Sequoia, on this panel. Mm-hmm. And he's going to be an interesting fellow to listen to, because the policy that went into that regulatory change is fascinating. It's to the lawyers certainly, but even again in the non-lawyers, this should be quite a eye opener. This panel.
Now, one of the great things about the Racing and Gaming Conference at Saratoga is that the historic Saratoga Racecourse is right there. Tell us something about this incredible track and if the conference is doing anything or holding any events at the location during the conference.
Oh, sure. Well, first of all, this year is, very special because we have the Belmont at Saratoga. Yep. So, while Belmont is being reconstructed, they're going to hold that Triple Crown race at Saratoga. And then the usual meet, mid-July to Labor Day at Saratoga. I'm very biased in my opinion, but I think that because Saratoga is my home track, but I think it's the very best racing in the world for those 6 weeks. Sure. And the setting is just incredibly beautiful at the racetrack. And then the broader setting of Saratoga Springs is, just delightful. It's just a beautiful little gym in upstate New York. And the other thing about Saratoga is you have the best. You have the best jockeys, you have the best trainers, you have the best owners, you have the best horses. There's not a lot of times in life where that all kind of comes together and you get to experience it and be part of it. I love Saratoga. I've been going there for well over 50 years, and I look forward to the meet every year, and this year's no different. One thing I do want to say is we are making available a trip to the track on Wednesday afternoon. So we'll have 12 sessions spread out over 3 days, Monday afternoon, all day Tuesday, and then Wednesday morning, Wednesday the 14th. And then Wednesday afternoon, we will head for the racetrack. Nice. And I hope, I can coax as many of the attendees of the conference to the track as possible. This year, we're going to go a little upscale, and we've rented out the Rachel Alexander suite.
Wow.
In the 1863 Club, and it is a spectacular way to watch the races. I mean, just incredible. So looking forward to that for sure.
Pat, we're running out of time, but if someone wants to get involved and attend the Racing and Gaming Conference at Saratoga, what's the website they go to, and how do they sign up to attend the event? RacingGamingSaratoga.com. And all of the information about the conference, the agenda, the hotels block, registering for the conference, registering to go to the track if you want to. All of that is on that website. And we are really running ahead of registrations than we did in the last couple of years. So we've built some momentum and some following, and I expect this year we'll have more people attend than we have in the past. We're looking at maybe 275 to 300 people, attendees, speakers, and attendees of the conference. So come early. Come early to the website. Pat Brown, thanks so much for coming on and telling us all about the Racing and Gaming Conference at Saratoga, which is being held on August 12th through the 14th, and you can check that out at racingandgamingsaratoga.com. Sounds like it's going to be an incredible event, so anyone who's interested in horse racing, sports betting, and in the gaming industry in general should check it out. Pat, thanks so much for telling us about it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
That'll do it for us this week. We'll see you next time on the Turnpike.